Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Federal and State Affairs. Before we get started, are there any bill introductions? Seeing none, we have final action on two bills we're going to work on today. First is Senate Bill 254, and let me have Jason give us the current bill brief, and then we have discussed some amendments, and we have a new amendment we'd like to talk about first, after Jason gives us a review. Jason?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 254 is a bill dealing with vacancies in the office of United States Senator. Under the bill as currently written, it would create a new statute that if such a vacancy occurs, then a convention of the state party of the same political party as the current senator would be convened by the state party chairperson within 21 days after receiving notice of the vacancy. The delegates at the convention would then elect an individual to fill that vacancy. That name would be transmitted to the governor, who would then be required by state law to appoint that person. And if the governor fails to appoint the person who is elected at the state party convention, then the statute would duly qualify and appoint the person to fill the vacancy for United States Senator. This would go into effect on July 1st of this year if enacted.
Thank you, Jason. And as you recall, there was a conflict with the 17th Amendment on this particular bill, which is why we need the amendment. We had two proposed amendments. One was a Wyoming model, which was the state party would select 3 candidates, and then the governor would select 1. The other was the Oregon model, where it went to a special election. The problem with that is we could have vacancies in the Senate, U.S. Senate seat from Kansas for up to 5 months with that particular model. So I think I'd like to start with a compromise amendment, which is based more or less on the Oklahoma model, and let Jason explain that. It's fairly simple.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the proposed substitute that was just distributed to the committee would amend the current statute 25-318 governing for vacancies for the United States Senator to require the governor to make a appointment to fill such vacancy. The individual to be appointed must have been a member of the same political party as the outgoing United States Senator for the preceding 10 years prior to the vacancy occurring, and that appointment would be subject to Senate confirmation, and if the legislature is out of session, then that confirmation would be handled by the Confirmation Oversight Committee.
Committee, any questions or discussion on this amendment? Seems pretty simple, I think. What is the will of the committee on this particular amendment, if there's a motion? Senator Blasey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had concerns on the original amendment, and so I think this is a much better fit, and so therefore I'll move the amendment.
I think it conforms also with what we did with the state treasurer and the insurance commissioner as well. We have a second by Senator Peterson. So motion by Senator Blasey to pass this the amendment to Senate Bill 254, second by Senator Peterson. Any further discussion? Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does this allow the governor to appoint anyone? There would be no recommendations submitted to the governor. She would just choose someone who had been registered with the same party for 10 years. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Yes. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment carries. We are back on the base bill. Any further discussion on the bill? Senator Blasey.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we pass out Senate Bill 254 as amended, favorably for passage.
Jason, do you have a?
Mr. Chairman, it would be pass out substitute for Senate Bill 254.
Substitute.
As a substitute,
Bill
okay,
254,
sorry.
As amended.
As he stated.
Okay. Is there a second? Second by Senator Cluse. Discussion? Senator Straub?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. I believe when we worked this bill, or when we heard this bill the first time, if you ever were to have a need for a special election, I think the office of United States Senator would be a position that would constitute the cost of having a special election. So it's my understanding with this amendment that if someone left a U.S. Senate seat 2 years into their term, someone would be appointed then to fill out the remainder of that 4 years? Or would they be, would there be a new election at the next general election?
Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they was just to fill the vacancy for the rest of that term of the vacating senator. And then at the next general election, if that person wanted to run, they could run, or obviously the general election would be up for grabs from both parties. But it would just be for the remaining term of that senator who's vacating the office, but for death or whatever reason. So it would not circumvent the next general election at all. Senator Straub?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Senator Tyson brought this bill, and I even wrote, if we were going to amend it, that she had recommended the Oregon language, which would provide for a special election. I still lean towards the special election rather than an appointment, but thank you.
Did you want to, well, we've already voted on the amendment. We have a motion and a second on the bill. Any further discussion? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vacancies can occur unexpectedly, and we want these positions to be filled quickly without delay. My concern is that this now, with the confirmation process, can become entangled in partisan politics. And aside from that, again, we want these positions filled without delay. And this bill overall lengthens out the process. And essentially, the current system isn't broken, so I really don't see the need to change it at this point. So I will respectfully not be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more question. I didn't really get to read that amendment closely, but if the legislature is not in session, does the governor's appointment go ahead and take effect, and then the Senate would confirm upon the next legislative session, or would they have to call a special session to make that appointment?
Jason, I'll let you answer that one.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the confirmation, if the legislature is out of session, would go to the Confirmation Oversight Committee, as other interim appointments do under current law.
Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And how many people are on that Confirmation Oversight Committee again? 11?
Jason.
9?
I'd have to look it up. I believe it's 7, but we'd have to confirm that.
I still think this is it's a serious issue, and I don't like the way that the vacancy would be filled, but I think there's still some more work that we could do on this bill to make it better. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Senator Fausto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You and I talked about if we weren't in session and what would we do. And so Jason so those members, would they be thoroughly briefed on the legislation prior to making that decision?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, there are 6 members on the Senate Committee on Confirmation Oversight. The current process is when an appointment is made and the legislature is not in session, then that confirmation information, the packet for the appointee is submitted to the committee, just as it is during session to this committee for a confirmation that's been referred to this committee. And that confirmation oversight committee then meets, reviews the information, and votes to confirm. And then the committee submits a report to the full Senate at the beginning of the next regular session to tie up the confirmation, basically, to finalize it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, what's the makeup of that committee?
Currently, there are, it's chaired by Senator Alley, and then there are 3 other members of the Republican Party, and then the vice chair is Senator Sykes, and there's 1 other member of the Democrat Party.
Any other questions, concerns? With that, I think we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no? I believe the ayes have it. The bill passes out as amended. Senate sub for Senate Bill 254 as amended. Okay, we turn on attention next to Senate Bill 474, which was the citizen initiation of ordinances. And I'll have Jason give us an overview of that bill.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 474 is a bill to amend 1 statute 12-3013 regarding petitions to initiate ordinances by the constituency of a city. Current law provides for the signature requirements on such petitions and provides the process for the requirement for the city governing body to put that petition up to an election of the electorate. Primarily, the amendments are on page 2 of the bill. Currently, there is a prohibition on administrative ordinances being enacted through the petition mechanism. You can see that being stricken on line 31 on page 2. And so if the bill were to be enacted, it would allow initiative petitions for administrative ordinances, which are currently prohibited. And that would go into effect on July 1st of this year.
Okay. And we do have an amendment on this bill. So I think we'll start with the amendment and then discuss it from there, because the concern that we heard from the opponents in the bill was the striking mostly of the administrative ordinance petitions, in that it would, the petition from the citizens might venture into an area that is more administrative than policy. And so this seeks to fix that issue. And Jason, I'll let you explain this one.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, in the balloon that was just distributed, I will first turn your attention to page 2 of the balloon on the back side. You will see in line 31, the restriction on administrative ordinances is reinserted there on line 31, and the lines 36 and 37 are stricken. So initiative petitions under this balloon would still not be allowed for administrative ordinances. Then the new balloon on page 1 would allow any proponent who is proposing an initiative petition to submit their petition to the legal counsel of the city for a review and determination of whether the petition complies with all applicable laws. Presumably, this would be to have a determination as to whether or not the petition constitutes an administrative ordinance or not. And this would be done prior to gathering any signatures on the petition. The city would have to make that determination within 30 days after submission and provide written notice of the determination to the individual who submitted it for review. The proponent of the petition could amend the petition and resubmit it for review under this subsection at a later date. And And that would not be barred, so they could resubmit it. They can only submit the same petition once, but they could submit an amended petition for a subsequent review under that subsection.
So essentially what this would do is prior to a petitioner going out and spending all the time gathering signatures and then having their petition shot down by the city legal counsel, it would give them guidance as to whether or not the petition conforms to the city laws. And if it does not, then they could take and amend that petition before they circulate it, and have guidance on that before they circulate the petition. That way you circumvent all the time spent attempting to fix or to sign the petitions only to have a legal challenge by a city. And as I understand it, this does not prohibit a city petition ordinance which is in current law. Is that correct, Jason? So in other words, if they decide to go forward, they could still submit a petition, but it may not have been under this legal review process. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes, the review is not required. It is an option for the proponent of petition. They could go forward and collect all their signatures and then submit the petition without having gone through this legal review in the first place. This is just a preliminary option.
Right. So that the current law is still intact in that you can have a citizen petition ordinance. Senator Faustido.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, who would review that petition with this, if this legislation were to pass, and would it be also the same person who is verifying signatures?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, under the balloon as written, it would be the city attorney would be responsible for conducting this legal review and determining that it was in compliance with applicable laws. The signatures on the petition, I believe, are reviewed by the city clerk, who certifies the petition to the governing body.
Okay. Senator Reichman. Caught you off guard, didn't I?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The bill, when it came forward, I was not supportive of it. I just thought they should go ahead and do the recall. This intrigues me, but I'm still not for sure exactly all that it means. Would you be okay if some of the opponents, if they would want to speak on this amendment, or would that bother you or not? Thank you.
I would probably be better off if they would submit. Well, we could open up, but I'd also like to hear a proponent of the as well. But very, very briefly, just a minute or two each, so that they can weigh in and we could ask a couple questions. So, is there some opponent of this amendment that would like to speak? Sure, Nathan, if you'd like to step up real quickly.
I'm Nathan Eberlein with the League of Kansas Municipalities. I largely want to be available for questions, but I will let you know that I circulated this balloon to our largest cities, all of whom worked on this over the weekend. I would say the general consensus is that they would rather keep things as status quo, but it certainly helps. I'd say the biggest concern that our attorneys responded with is the risk of conflict. The city attorney is there on behalf of the city, and so this asks, it gives access to the citizenry to use the attorney's services as part of that review process, and they could then be in conflict with each other somewhere down the road. So there are certain ethical obligations that falls on the attorney in representing their client. In this instance, the city attorney is representing the city. And so you're asking them to also then help the citizens in that process. That's the biggest concern that our city attorneys came back with, and just want to express that here.
Question, Senator Holscher? Did you have a follow-up question? Okay, Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I'm understanding then, too. There's no limits as far as the number of opinion requests that could potentially come in. And if there's a 30-day time period for turnaround, I'm concerned in terms of what type of a strain that could put on staff, as well as potentially a funding issue to ensure that that information is turned around in the time frame.
Yeah, if I were to resubmit testimony, there'd be a few bullet points, and some of the guardrails on that review time would be part of it. Again, if I were to, as I am, I'm here on behalf of the cities. If I were to say, yeah, we don't want to have you be able to just come in and dictate how the city attorney spends their time, that unfettered access is a concern to be able to continue to resubmit. So some guardrails on how often they could submit it, that's something that we would prefer to see. So that's just another element that did come up in my conversations with the city attorneys.
There have been instances where the cities have filed suits against their own citizens, and that creates a conflict as well. True, because they are being paid to sue their own citizens who are paying them through their taxes.
But it's not as if the citizens, it's corporate representation. So the corporate entity, the legal entity of the city, that is who places those city attorneys in place. So their client is unqualified, that entity. Yes, the citizenry is in it, and that is the city council or the city commission's responsibility to serve well in that role. But that's not their role.
Okay, thank you. One more question, then I'm going to allow a proponent to come up and defend the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at this balloon, it says a proponent may, and it continues to use the language may. So this would not prohibit any petitions being submitted that were not legally reviewed by the city or county or whomever, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you very much.
If I could have Eric Rucker come up. Eric was the author of the original bill, or brought the original bill, and also this amendment. And if you could speak to some of the concerns of the cities, because I think, obviously, the conflict issue, just...
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Eric Rucker. This legal review is always done. The issue is when the legal review would be done. When citizens get together and they decide that they want to propose a city ordinance, they're always going to, in addition to having sufficient signatures on the petition, going to face a legal review by the city of all applicable laws. The issue before you is when that legal review is going to be accomplished. We would prefer to see the legal review and the sufficiency, the finding of sufficiency, be before the citizens have to go out and garner all of their petition signatures, go to all of that effort and work, and then submit it to the city, and the city goes, we have a problem with your petition. This moves the legal review up before they actually start gathering the petition signatures. And as it relates to the conflict between the citizens as well as as opposed to the city, this is a conflict that is faced on a regular basis by the Attorney General of the state of Kansas. Agencies are in conflict with one another, state agencies. There are a variety of other instances, including school finance, where we have to, during the during the time that I was Senior Deputy Attorney General, we regularly faced individuals where we had to find attorneys to represent, from the Attorney General's office, to represent one state agency and another state agency. But what you do is you build a Chinese firewall between the two so that they do not interact with one another. The right that you are protecting is the right that the legislature has previously given to cities and cities only to allow their citizens to propose city ordinances. And if in fact it passes muster, it goes to an election of the people to see whether or not, the people themselves decide. If the city council decides against the idea, it goes to an election. There is a legal sufficiency determining before that goes to the ballot. And that's regularly done by the city. This is a one-time instance where they have the opportunity to determine ahead of the petition and all of the effort that goes into it. And we would respectfully request that you favorably consider it.
Any questions, Senator Fasquedo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rucker?
Yes, ma'am.
You could be in the Guinness Book of World Records for holding multiple offices. So would you clarify again your opening statement of, having the review prior to gathering the signatures? So explain that part. So,
Yes, ma'am. It would. Yes, ma'am. Senator, the way that it would probably result is that they come up with an idea that they want to pass as a city ordinance, and they formulate the actual face of the petition. And there is guidance that is given not only in this statute, but also in the general petition statutes found in Chapter 25, Article 36. Things like it has to begin with, be it resolved. It has to state a legislative intention as opposed to an administrative intention. That means like what it is that you do every day. You're not about the business of passing rules and regulations. You are passing statutes, and that's what the citizens would be required to do, to put it in a form and state it in such a way that it is a legal ordinance to be proposed. Once they have gotten those things accomplished, they would lay it down before the city if they, as Senator Staub pointed out, they don't have to do it. But if in fact they want to know the city's opinion, they would lay it down before the city legal counsel, and they would say, do you find any insufficiencies here of applicable law? And they would give a report within a 30-day period of time that would benefit both the city council as well as the citizens to make that determination before they go to the time, trouble, and effort to pass the petition and get sufficient signatures that are also required under the law.
So you just look at it as a guideline prior to?
Yeah, I think that you either take the advice of the city council, you don't, even if in fact you were to take advantage of the review, if in fact you wanted to reject the city council and go forward with your idea, you certainly would be free to do that. But you do it at the risk of knowing all of the time you're passing the petition out there that the city is adjudged certain insufficiencies to exist. And that seems to be foolhardy and not something that I would imagine would occur very often.
Chairman, Mr. Rucker, so this is prior to gathering the signatures. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Senator.
Reminder too, this amendment also puts in the exemption of the administrative so that it doesn't allow for those administrative petitions to come, but gives them legal review. Senator Straub, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just thinking back to my time on the county commission and that a lot of cities have a 3-mile zoning area surrounding them. And there have been many, many questions over the years of who has authority, who, if you were to petition somebody, who would you petition? Would you petition the city? Would you petition the county? So I'm kind of wondering how all this would work, because oftentimes your city council is also your zoning commission. And I believe this bill likely came about as part of that issue in Prairie Village, correct?
Mr. Rucker, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Straub. The issue that I would like to make certain that is very, very plain is that this only deals with ordinances of cities and cities only. The state legislature has not given this grant of authority to any other municipality, whether it be school district or county or rural groundwater drainage districts. Only cities and cities only have the ability to offer up city ordinances for this sort of adoption.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think that answers my question because I know of specific cases where there have been flood zones and they're within that 3-mile zoning radius of a city, and it's ultimately the city who has control over that. Are those administrative ordinances? What are those?
Again, I would, because we don't have that, that language in there any longer as it relates to the prohibition of administrative language, I would be reticent to opine.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Rucker. Appreciate it very much. Okay, committee, we're still on this amendment. What is the will of committee on the amendment? Certainly, I would move the amendment, but if I can get a second. Second by Senator Cluse. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. All those opposed, no? No. The ayes appears to have it. We're back on the base bill. Any further discussion on the base bill? Senator Longvine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think when we heard this bill, the majority of the testimony came about concerns within Prairie Village, and I'm certainly sympathetic to what's going on there and their issue. I have not had a single proponent contact me from my district. I've had almost all of my cities contact me concerned about it. So I've got a little bit of heartburn about whether this legislation is for one city and how well it fits with all. My main concern is, in looking forward, I believe that a floor amendment, should this bill come to the floor, could be written, that would be written in a way that it could possibly be germane to statewide referendums, which would allow the citizenry to bypass the legislature on big issues, which has happened in other states on particularly big items that the legislature, that may poll well, that the legislature has not acted on. So looking forward, I know that's a stretch, but that is a big concern of mine, that we would circumvent that process, and it certainly could come to the floor in a way that we could not prevent it.
And that's very good points you brought up. I did check on that, and I've had a couple of opinions that it would not be germane. I don't know if Jason.
Mr. Chair, as a former Rules Committee chair, I can tell you that you never know whether until it comes to that.
That is very good, very point well taken. Any other discussion on the base bill? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several concerns, and some of them were alluded to by the senator prior to me, but this does now create an unfunded mandate with the amendment that was added, and it does feel like a lot of overreach in regard to something that happened in one community. And essentially, there are unintended consequences here that really have alarming concerns, so I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Committee, what's the will of the committee on this bill? If you'd like to, Senator Cluse.
Yes, I just thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just move we pass out as amended favorably.
Senate Bill 474, second by Senator Straub. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The noes appear to have it. So the bill fails. That is all the work that we have today. Tomorrow we are going to hear Senate Bill 511, which is on the microbreweries. That's all that's on the calendar for tomorrow at this point. No further discussion. Thank you for your work and discussion today, committee, and we are adjourned.